All right, this is big time. I was told not to be so opinionated in how I feel about pedophiles. So we're going to keep it here. This is how I feel about people who hurt children. And this doesn't just spread out. This isn't just for pedophiles. This is also for people who commit drive-bys and home invasions. Okay? If you're responsible for some dumb shit, this is what I think should happen to you, especially for children. Now, again, you're talking about self defense. Like if that Pakistani Uber Eats driver in DC had defended himself from that 13 and 14-year-old black girls who were carjacking him, if he had shot them in self defense because they had a taser, oh, hey, it's just too bad. That to me is a little different. But again, if that's not the situation, like I said, drive-bys, home invaders, pedophiles, that's what I think should happen to you. So let's get to some news I wanted to share. They're coming for women's spaces. Transgender killer and rapist who blamed his crimes on his female side quietly moved to a women's prison. So here's a psychopath. I mean, it just makes sense, right? If you're a wolf, if you think you're a wolf and you're put in a place with a bunch of other wolves, and you could lie and say you're a sheep and be placed in a prison with sheep, and you're a wolf, you'd run the prison where the sheep are, right? A Kansas man convicted for the brutal murder of one woman and the kidnapping of another has begun identifying as transgender while incarcerated and was quietly transferred to a woman's prison in Topeka just days ago. Thomas Preston Lamb, 81, now uses the name I don't care and is described as female in the state criminal justice information system. Lamb was transferred to Topeka Correctional Facility, the state's only prison for women, on January 27th. Wow, 81. Lamb was convicted of kidnapping and murdering Karen Sue Kemmerly, a 24-year-old student at the University of Kansas, Missouri, around December 5th, 1969. Lamb murdered Kemmerly after she commented he was a handsome man, which sent him into a violent rage as he saw himself as a woman. Lamb strangled the woman to death and left her nude corpse in a cornfield. The young student's body was found approximately 5 days after her death on December 7th. In addition to Kimberly, Lamb also was convicted on charges of kidnapping 18-year-old Patricia Ann Childs on January 15th, 1970. Interesting how you identify as a woman, yet those are still your victims. I wonder what kind of pathology that is. Childs was returned to her family after her father paid out a $3,500 ransom demanded by Lamb. During the ordeal, Lamb's bound Childs' hands and raped her, according to court documents. Though he was never formally charged for the sexual assault. I wish the father had murdered you. Lamb was ultimately, after a fair trial, after due process, after a jury. I showed the millstone. That's what I think of people like you. Lamb was ultimately convicted of 2 counts of kidnapping and 1 count of first-degree murder, and is now serving 3 consecutive life sentences in prison. While in prison, Lamb began going by his psychological delusion, and in 2007 filed for a legal name change. Court records reveal. Psychiatrist agrees insane. He'd rather die. Oh, yeah, well, so would we. While detained and awaiting trial for the abductions and murder, Lamb escaped. How did that happen? From the Johnson County Jail with another inmate, but was apprehended in Lasigne for 4 hours later. During the incident, Lamb and his accomplice held a 50-year-old Olaf man hostage. On February 25th, 1970, Lamb was ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Why? Why? If he's raped somebody and kidnapped somebody and then broke out of prison and held someone hostage, he's a psychopath. He's a homicidal, raping psychopath. Who cares? He can't be around anybody else. I don't need a psychiatrist to tell me he's a psychopath. Do I need a veterinarian to tell me what a dog is? Lamb, who waived his right to a jury trial, was interviewed by Dr. Joseph Satin, a psychiatrist specializing in criminology at the Menninger Foundation in Topeka, who filmed the exchange. I wonder what that video was like. The video was shown in court as evidence to support an insanity plea. Before playing the recording for the spectators, Judge Harold Riggs warned of vulgar and obscene content. In my opinion, the defendant's thinking was severely disturbed at the time of the crimes, and he did not have the normal knowledge of the nature and quality of his acts alleged to have been committed, Satin testified. Now, as to the second element, as to knowing whether they're wrong, I'm a little more uncertain. Oh, I see. Mental health. That's interesting. So you talked to this guy for what, 45 minutes, and now you think he shouldn't be held accountable for his crimes. That's terrifying. Lamb told Satin that he thought he was a girl when he carried out the crimes against the two women. It was Satin's view that Lamb was intelligent and aware of the crimes he committed. However, he emphasized peculiarities in his personality. At times during the course of the kidnappings, there must have been some awareness that what he was doing was wrong. But during both of the kidnappings, he was in a peculiar state of mind in which he felt himself to be a girl. Well, typically girls are more empathetic. They can also be more ruthless in a social setting. That's true. The doctor went on to blame the female version of Lamb for the crimes, insinuating that the male version of Lamb was not mentally present during the time of the offenses. Imagine being the father of this fucking piece of shit. And imagine if they let him go because he claimed he was a woman. Maybe she knew the nature and quality of it, but maybe she knew what was being done was wrong. But the normal Thomas Lamb, I believe, probably did not, Satin added. The doctor continued that Lamb had an overriding preoccupation that all of his problems revolved around the need to have a sex reassignment operation. In a seemingly contradictory statement, Satin said that Lamb did not hold prejudices against women, but believed they have all the advantages, especially in divorce court. Satin pointed out that Lamb had a capacity to slide into fantasy thinking and could be unable to tell the difference between reality and fantasy. Well, I bet your victims could tell the difference in reality when they were being raped or kidnapped. I bet that wasn't a fantasy for them. It's always about now the criminal's the victim. I love this. The killer, Satin said, told his mother that he liked to feel and touch women's undergarments. If I can't get a sex change operation, I'm going to force someone to kill me down there in that courtroom, Lamb told Satin. Describing his fantasies, Lamb said, I lapse into daydreams and don't even know what's going on around me, and clarified that his daydreams centered around his female habit. Using the example of commuting the 100 miles from Fort Scott to Kansas City, Lamb told the doctor, that's 100 miles, but I may lapse into a daydream and lose about 50 of them. I also do this in the cell day to day. The killer's mother, Hazel Irene Lamb, told prosecutors she had found women's undergarments in her son's dresser beginning from the time he was about 10 years old. I found my panties I had discarded in the rag bag in the dresser drawer, she said, and noted the similar instances had occurred often. I wonder if she says wash. Prior to his criminal behavior, Lamb had been honorably discharged from the U.S. Navy because he was deemed not suitable, and there was evidence of significant psychosexual confusion. Interesting. I bet they don't diagnose people like that anymore. Lamb, Satin said, went through a brief period in the gay world in Kansas City, but the experience disgusted and frightened him. My diagnosis is he's suffering from a serious mental disorder that has two elements in it. One that goes under the name of transsexualism, and the second element is the underlying disorder in thinking, which in my opinion is a form of schizophrenia, sometimes called borderline or latent schizophrenia. I wonder how many times you have to see a psychiatrist before they give you this type of diagnosis. In New York City, to be detained against your will, you actually need two separate doctors to say to be detained against your will. I wonder how many sessions it took for this guy to say he's crazy. Lamb's attorney, George Lowe, recounted the motivation for murdering Kemmerly, as stated by Mark Bennett, assistant county attorney. There was some sexual activity in the course of which some statements that she made to him angered him and seemed to him like a mockery. There was a quarrel between the two of them, and in the course of the quarrel, he strangled her. So he's a murderer. A psychiatrist, and I'm not saying in self-defense. Someone's going to edit this and clip it. Not in self-defense. A psychiatrist who evaluated Lamb in 1965 after his first conviction for theft stated that his obsession with women's clothing was central to his legal difficulties. Dr. Hector Cavalin testified that Lamb, then 25 years old, had committed the burglary with the intent of using the stolen money to buy more clothing. Lamb, Cavalin said, had a severe emotional disturbance, and his transvestic fetish was one manifestation of his illness. While serving a sentence of 1 to 5 years at the Kansas State Prison for burglary and larceny, Lamb escaped taking a guard hostage. This guy's a psychopath. He was soon discovered hiding in an unoccupied house 3 blocks away, wearing women's clothing and in possession of a butcher knife. Lamb was later released on parole in 1969 when he committed the murder and abductions. Who let this motherfucker out? Cavillin came to 2 final conclusions about Lamb's psychiatric condition and said that his sexual deviation and borderline personality indicated that he functioned someplace between the psychotic and the neurotic. Yet the doctor also expressed that he had no conclusive opinion as to Lamb's sanity or insanity at the time he committed the kidnappings and murder. When describing details leading up to the killing, Lamb told Cavillin that he strangled Kemmerly after the girl told him he was a handsome man. But he didn't want to be handsome. He wanted to be pretty, the psychiatrist said, adding that Kemmerly had an intimate relationship with Lamb and told him he was very capable sexually. Kemmerly had it. What? Both comments, the doctor testified, infuriated Lamb because he wanted to be a woman. Cavillin further explained that Lamb showed no evidence of homosexual practices or wish for homosexuality. Lamb told the psychiatrist that he found same-sex attracted individuals repugnant. Interesting. During cross-examination, Cavillin considered the insanity plea, stating, "It is possible when he killed this girl, he knew right from wrong, but he didn't later on. I don't believe Mr. Lamb knew who he was. He thought he was a girl." So thinking you were a girl back in 1970, they considered you crazy or insane. My, how things change. An additional prosecution psychiatrist, Dr. Herbert Spiegel, told the court that Lamb showed a minimal amount of emotion while recalling details of the abductions and murder. According to Spiegel, Lamb was aware of his criminal behavior. Additionally, Associate Professor of Psychiatry at the University of Kansas Medical Center, Dr. William McNelly, described Lamb's core difficulty as an antisocial personality and a gender difficulty known as transsexualism. Lamb was given female undergarments by the Kansas Department of Corrections while incarcerated, with the intimate clothing described as therapeutic for Lamb's gender dysphoria. He was also provided with estrogen and testosterone blocking drugs. Why? Why? He's in prison. You're in prison, bro. I don't know how. I'm not sure how I feel about that. The guy strangled a woman, raped a woman, held a guard hostage, kidnapped another guy when he escaped. Like 3 hots in a cot. You're good. Why are my taxes paying for this guy? In a 2017 motion filed by Lamb against the KDOC, he alleged that his 8th Amendment rights against cruel and unusual punishment were being violated. Yeah, let's talk to your victims, motherfucker. Yeah, you're the victim. Fuck you. The convicted killer demanded more comprehensive treatment of his gender dysphoria, access to more female items in prison, recognition of her name change, and transfer to a female-only prison facility. Further accommodations requested by Lamb included castration surgery, genital sex reassignment surgery, female voice therapy, electrolysis, and/or laser hair removal. To support his position, Lamb cited guidelines published by WPATH, of course. So we're not even going to do watchful waiting. This guy is a homicidal psychopath. You're gonna let this guy be around other women? Yes, I'm reading the story. Of course they did. Lamb's 2017 request to be transferred to a women's correctional facility was denied by District Judge Eric Melgren. In his decision, it was stated that Lamb is not entitled to transfer to a female facility. Although Lamb argues that transfer does not raise serious safety and security concerns, the court, well, of course the killer doesn't think he's violent. Of course not. The court cannot overlook the heinous crimes for which Lamb is serving 3 life sentences. Thomas Lamb murdered Karen Sue Kemmerly, a woman. Shortly thereafter, he kidnapped Patricia Ann Child, another woman, and forced her to have sex with him while she was held against her will. So kidnapping and rape. He continued referring to Lamb with feminine program. Why? See, already you're giving in. You should have said, "Look here, motherfucker. Look here, my dude. My man." Thomas was ordered to serve 3 life sentences, though that he would never kill or hurt another woman again. Thomas is now delusional, and I'm not saying your name, is still a convicted kidnapper and murderer of women, and the justification of his sentence has not changed. Last year, public outcry ensued after it came to light that a convicted pedophile was lobbying for gender self-identification prison reform in the state of Kansas. Well, no shit. Wow. So the pedophile is now the victim. Fuck you. Ray Bennett, formerly known as Jacob Lawrence Pena, was convicted in 2016 of indecent liberties with a child and was placed on a sex offender registry for 25 years. According to the 2016 KSN news coverage of the attack, Bennett forcibly imprisoned the girl at his residence and raped her. Despite this, Bennett was utilized as a source to decry the hardships faced by, you're the victim. Okay. In January 2022, Bennett was profiled in the Kansas City branch of NPR. Days later, he was sourced for a similar article in the Topeka Capital Journal. The following week, the Leavenworth Times also sympathetically profiled Bennett. Bennett was given multiple platforms to complain about poor treatment by Kansas correctional staff and to advocate for convicted men to be legally permitted to transfer into women's institutions based on their delusion. That's right, ladies. That's right. You can't even go to prison by yourself. They're coming for women's spaces right in our own country. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. All right. Now let's hear about more Democrat bullshit. $192,000 in the campaign funds paid out to Maxine Waters' daughter in 2022. Karen Waters has received over $1.2 million in payments from her mother's campaign. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Here's the lady that wants African Americans to learn queer studies. Here's the lady that says when 5 black cops beat up and kill a black guy who's handcuffed, she says it's white supremacy. Ugh. California Democratic Rep Maxine Waters reportedly funneled 6 figures in payments of campaign funds for her daughter during the 2022 campaign cycle. According to Fox News, Karen Waters made $192,300 off her mom's campaign to run her slate mailer operation from January 2021 and December 2022. In a slate mailer campaign, other candidates' campaigns pay Waters' campaign to appear on endorsement mailers sent out to constituents. According to the outlet, Waters may be the only national politician using practice to raise funds, but the practice is common among Democrats in the Golden State. This is not the first time the Congresswoman's daughter has profited off her mother's campaign. The Federal Election Commission gave the okay for the operations in the fall of 2004, and since then, Karen has received over $1.2 million in payments. Vice President Kamala Harris was campaigning for California Attorney General in 2010, had her campaign send $33,000 to Waters' campaign for a slate mailer. In 2016, Harris paid Waters' campaign $30,000 for another, while running, for the U.S. Senate, according to the Federal Election Commission filings. California Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom paid Waters' campaign $45,000 for a slate mailer while running for lieutenant governor in 2010. She sounds like a gatekeeper. This sounds like gatekeeping. This sounds like pay to play to me. Former Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer spent a combined $33,000 in 2010 and 2018 with Waters' campaign for the mailers. I'm not going to be distracted by these are not going to distract me at all. We're going to stay focused. In 2020, embattled progressive Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon, another Soros-funded DA, paid $36,500 to Waters' committee for the slate mailers during her campaign. Insane. So she sounds like a gatekeeper to me. All right, next. And some good news. One for gun rights. In the state that was trying to do this insane bail reform, in this state where Jamie Foxx, what's her name? Kim Foxx, who didn't prosecute Jesse Smollett, who didn't prosecute 5 black kids who were gangbangers who fired 100 rounds at each other on film in front of police, didn't charge them, mutual combat. They tried to pass these, I believe they tried to pass these gun laws under an amusement bill. So they snuck them in. So they won't arrest black people for killing everybody, and then they try to remove your ability to defend yourself. Thank you, Democrats. But there was a judge with some common sense. Illinois' restrictive new gun laws struck down by court. The plaintiffs are being immediately and irreparably harmed each day in which their fundamental right to bear arms is being denied. I already like this judge. Yeah, that's right. I have the right to vote. I have the right to church, a synagogue, a mosque, or Scientology, or Mormon, whatever. I have the right to a fair trial. I have the right to an attorney. I have the right that you, as a cop, need to get a warrant. You know what else I have the right to? The right to defend myself with firearms. Damn. How many armed guards does this fat motherfucker have? I wonder, as soon as he signed the bill, I would have walked right up to this fat motherfucker with a box with slingshots. Hey, since you hate guns so much, I brought you slingshots, fundamentalist style, like David and Goliath. So when people attack you, your guards can set the example. Piece of shit. On Tuesday, the 5th District Appellate Court of Illinois upheld and extended the scope of a restraining order placed on the state's restrictive new Protect Illinois Communities Act, a bill passed into law on January 10th that banned the sale and possession of assault weapons, quote unquote, rapid and fire enhancement known as switches, and high-capacity magazines. Yeah, well, one group of kids shows themselves on social media with switches, but you're not arresting any of them because racism, right? Fox News report that after Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the law and it went into effect, 850 Illinois citizens and several gun merchants brought a lawsuit. Good for you. Stand up for yourself. It's insanity. Against the state over the law, saying it was enacted improperly and violated the state and U.S. Constitution's Equal Protection Clause and providing exemptions for some groups of people based on their occupation or training, such as former law enforcement. Well, of course, the cops can have guns. You can't. They don't even arrest black gang members when they shoot at each other, but you can't protect yourself. Oh, but he has armed security. Fuck these people. On January 24th, Effingham County Judge Joshua Morrison, ordered a temporary restraining order in response to the lawsuit which prevented its enforcement and said it is ruling that the plaintiffs are, quote, being immediately and irreparably harmed each day in which their fundamental right to bear arms is being denied. The law banned the sale and manufacture of AR-15s and AK-47s, long-gun magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition, and handgun magazines that hold more than 15 rounds of ammunition. The law also extended the state's red flag law scope and enabled a person to be prohibited from purchasing a firearm if they were on the list for a longer period of time. Yes, in other words, screwing us over. The Associated Press reports Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, a Democrat, appealed Morrison's ruling, but the 3-judge appellate court upheld the restraining order in a 2-1 decision. Oh, who was the judge who... The appellate court said the restraining order can stay in place and extended its scope beyond the plaintiffs to apply to all of Illinois, reports Fox News. The court said the plaintiff's suit had a likelihood of success on the merits and that the gun law likely violated their equal protection as granted under the Constitution. The executive director of the NRA Institute for Legislative Action, Jason Ouimet, told Fox, the NRA will not stand by while activist politicians pass unconstitutional laws that do nothing to promote public safety. Correct. You won't arrest one demographic because they're mostly black, and then you expect everybody else to not be able to defend themselves. But I bet the Democrats, they all have their own private security. Lori Lightfoot has a SWAT team that follows her around. We sued the state of Illinois because this new law is a blatant violation of America's Second Amendment rights. Correct. Look, if you don't like guns, you tell your private security to use mace, okay? Fuck these people. All right, we got another gun story. I don't know if you ever heard of John Lott. One more gun story, and then we're going to get to the defense of gun use. The per capita rate of mass shootings was much higher in California than the rest of the U.S., despite the state having the strictest gun control laws in the country, by John Lott. You should look him up. He has some interesting books. After Friday's mass public shooting in Israel that left 7 people dead, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced firearm licensing will be expedited and expanded in order to enable thousands of additional citizens to carry weapons. Interesting. By contrast, after the 3 public shootings over the last 2 weekends in California, yeah, and you know that Congress sucks Israel's dick hard, bro. The Israel lobby is one of the largest and one of the most powerful lobbies in our country. So I find it interesting that all the things that Israel does, they have a wall. They defend that wall with machine guns. They don't let anybody into their country. They gave Ethiopian women Depo-Provera in 2018, which is a form of birth control, by injection, and didn't tell them. They wish for their people to remain a majority. So in other words, an ethno state. And then Netanyahu turns around and says, my citizens will be allowed to defend themselves. How interesting that everything they do, some of our politicians do what? Interesting. By contrast, after the 3 public shootings over the last 2 weekends in California, the verdict from Democrats is that we need even more gun control. President Joe Biden and Senator Dianne Feinstein, another Democrat in California, she's not just a Democrat, used the attacks to call for a renewed federal assault weapons ban. California's other Democrat Senator Alex Padilla called for expanded, more gun control, blah, 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 blah. California already has the strictest gun control laws in the country, and it has both of those laws and many more. In contrast to Israel and almost all the rest of the United States, concealed handgun permits have been almost impossible to get in the counties where California's attacks occurred. And 2 of them were from Asians. Isn't that crazy? That's why you didn't hear about it. If it was a white guy, oh my gosh. CNN, MSNBC, Joy Reid, The View, Whoopi Goldberg, LeBron James, yo. In Los Angeles County, where 2 of the attacks occurred, there was only 1 permit for every 5,660 adults. In San Mateo County, where another attack occurred, there is 1 permit per every 24,630 adults. Well, yeah, it's California. How many illegal immigrants do you have? And by contrast, in the 43 right to carry states, there is 1 permit holder for every 9 people. When Americans are allowed to carry permitted concealed handguns, they stop about half the active shooting attacks in the U.S. Based. Evaluating the current approach. Before doubling down on yet more gun control and making the rest of the country like California, let's first ask ourselves how the current approach has worked out. Even some Democrats in California are calling for a reevaluation. California has some of the strictest gun control laws in the country, but look at what we just had today. Los Angeles County Sheriff Robert Luna acknowledged after the Monterey Park attack. I can tell you this, the status quo is not working. We need to re-examine what we are doing and what may work better. However, of course, double down, baby. Most other Democrats are unwilling to concede that their laws aren't working. Chicago's school system just needs more money. The Philadelphia school system just asked for $1.3 billion more. This year, we're going to get it right. On Saturday, Biden tweeted the claim he has often made. In the 10 years that the assault weapons ban was on the books, mass shootings were down. But there was no drop in the number of attacks using so-called assault weapons during the 1994 to 2004 ban. More importantly, if the ban made a difference, we should see a drop in the percentage of attacks with assault weapons during the federal ban period, and then an increase in the post-ban period. But the exact opposite is true. You can't have the ban reducing the number of attacks without the share of attacks using assault weapons falling. California's laws. In 2021, when federal judge Roger Benedict struck down California's assault weapons ban, he concluded that the state's experts who summarized the existing research could not provide any evidence that the prohibition reduced any type of violent crime. Based. Last year, California's Governor Gavin Newsom put out a fact sheet purporting to prove California's gun safety policy save lives, provide model for a nation seeking solutions. According to the report, from 1993 to 2017, California's firearm mortality rate declined by 55%, almost 4 times the decrease in the rest of the nation. Many of California's most important firearm laws went into effect in the early 90s. California's murder rate peaked in 93 at 13.1 per 100,000 people. That's up from 10.9 in 1989, the year before the state's assault weapons ban went into effect. Yes. Now here's a very simple question, Mr. Newsom. Can we please have those murders and those statistics spread out by race? Can you tell me the race of the perpetrators? Why did the murder rate fall by 10% in 1994 and not in 1990 and continue falling by 53% by 2000? California's tough 3 strikes criminal punishment law went into effect on March 7th, the crime bill. Sounds like the crime bill. The Newsom fact sheet also quotes the Public Policy Institute of California. Compared to citizens of other states, Californians are about 25% less likely to die in mass shootings. Between 2019 and 2021, the state's annual mass shooting homicide rate of 1.4 per 1 million people was lower than the national average of 1.9. After the California Supreme Court declared the state's assault weapons ban unconstitutional in 1998, a new version was enacted in 2000, picking just a few years from 2019 to 2021 to evaluate the law seems arbitrary. Whether one picks the years from 2000 on, 2010 on, or 2020 on, the per capita rate of mass public shootings in California is always greater than the rate for the rest of the country. The rate has been consistently lower in Texas, to which gun control groups give an F grade for its gun control laws. From 2010 on, California's per capita rate of mass public shootings was 43% higher than the rate in Texas and 29% higher than in the rest of the United States. Since 2020, the rate in California was 276% higher than in Texas and 100% higher than in the rest of the U.S. Last summer, after the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, billboards in LA and San Francisco tried to warn Californians of the danger of mass public shootings in Texas. The idea was to dissuade people from moving so they could keep sucking out your tax dollars. But if that is what concerns Californians, they would be well advised to leave their own state as soon as possible. Los Angeles County Sheriff Luna is right that California's gun control laws aren't working. The last thing we should do is use California's set of laws as the model for the rest of the country. John R. Lott Jr. is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center and the author, most recently, of Gun Control Myths. I am probably going to get that book and check those out. Okay. Those are our news for the day. We got one defensive gun use. So we do this every time. If you're new to my channel, if anyone ever watches my channel, this is the Gun Violence Archive. This is where I get all my defensive gun uses. As you can see, there have been 54 mass shootings. All right, let me update it. 54 mass shootings. It's been 98 defensive gun uses. So story for today. And sometimes we read and sometimes they have news clips. Got a news clip today. See if I can get it to reload.
Chuck's Big Adventure is always up for exploring new places and new things to do. Mark your
so it seems like a home invasion.
Route 56 Gala on
and again,
Saturday, March 4th.
It's like
I'm excited to MC the
I cover 5 to 10 defensive gun uses a week, and 50% of them are home invasions. Like, what would people do? What would they have done without the firearm?
That breaking news that we've been following since around 4 this morning, where we learned a man was shot and killed on Indy's near Northwest Side. It's not too far from Riverside Park.
Around the same time, the homeowner reported a possible break-in. Samantha Johnson is at the scene, and I know, Sam, you have some new information you've just learned.
Yeah, Julie, we talked to Lieutenant Shane Foley within the last 30 minutes. He was able to confirm that it was an adult man who was found shot and killed outside of a home here on West 26th Street. Now, the scene here is starting to quiet down a little bit. It is now in the hands of the homicide investigators, and that investigation is really just getting started. Let me show you what's still going on here behind us. Right now, the investigators are sort of focusing their attention about 4 houses down. That's where you can see some crews are still here working this scene. Police were able to confirm to us that just after 4 o'clock this morning, the homeowner actually alerted police that he had that person had found an adult male outside. That's when police arrived here at the scene. They were able to find that person had been shot and killed. Now, the question is what led up to that shooting? We talked to Lieutenant Foley, and he was able to say he's not exactly sure what.
I was in fear of my life. I want my attorney. I was in fear of my life. I want my attorney. And then shut your fucking mouth.
Led up to that shooting, but he told us it could be some sort of possible home invasion. Of course, that's now up to investigators to piece together exactly what happened here. This is on the city's northwest side. We are just a few blocks east of Riverside Park, if you're familiar with this area. So as neighbors start to wake up here in this community, investigators say they will be on scene, talking to more people who may have witnessed anything early this morning. And as soon as we get more information from police, we'll have that for you online and on air. We're live on the northwest side.
So 3 points I'm going to make that I make all the time, and I hate about the news. 3 points I'm going to make all the time. The common thing that a lot of these newscasters like to say, and a lot of these stupid people like to say is, we got more cameras, we got more security, we got a Ring doorbell cam, we got more lights. 2 things I'm going to say, and then we're done for Friday's stream. Number 1, if this was a home invasion, the police weren't there. And number 2, if this was a home invasion, the guy probably survived because he reached for a gun and not a cell phone. So anyway, that's Friday's stream. I'm Big Time. That's news to me.